Our next speaker needs no introduction, although I love introducing her because she's such a fantastic ally for all of us, certainly in the 14th District. Congresswoman Jackie Speier has been for all of us an iconic leader in the area of human rights, gender equality, consumer protection, across everything you can name. Jackie's been in the forefront of that. She also carries the proud moniker of mom of both a son and a daughter, so she's got a very vested interest in this conversation. So Jackie, if you would, thank you so much for joining us. Woohoo!
Rayona, thank you very much, and it's great to be with you all. Let me first start off by saying to the Bay Area Council and to Jim Wunderman, thank God you get it. And I think the fact that the Bay Area Council has recognized the importance of having a discussion on gender is really critical. And I want to say to Rayona Sharpneck how much I am thrilled to be with you again and to see your leadership continue in so many wonderful ways. How many of you are under 40? Good number of you. How many of you are under 50? Virtually all of you. Okay, so all right, how many of you are over 50 and proud of it? All right, this is a real test. How many of you are over 60 and even prouder of it? All right. Okay. So I just came from an event in San Francisco where we were celebrating the fact that the Professional and Businesswomen's Conference of California is celebrating its 25th year. Rayona Sharpneck was actually a president of PBWC in one of those years. Now, I started PBWC in my 30s. And in my 30s, I started working on this issue. Now, I don't look like I'm 40 or 50. I'm actually 63 years old. And I've been working on this issue for all those years. And the fact that we're talking about this in the corporate environment today is good news, but it's coming really late in my life. So I want to spend some time talking to you about why this is so critical for the vibrancy of this region, why it's so critical to all the women in our lives and to our daughters, but to the vitality of what makes this region the powerhouse that it is in the country, and why if we do it here, it'll start to happen across the country as well. So you're embarking, I hope, on a major pioneering effort to rebalance the gender imbalance that exists in corporate America. Earlier this year, I met a young woman who spoke at a hearing, and she told me the story of how she and her husband met and how their lives kind of evolved. They were both in a graduate school program, both earning the exact same degree. They each applied to a number of jobs, and they had, pretty identical resumes, except for the fact that she had an edge over her husband because she had had 5 extra years of experience and an additional certification. Lo and behold, they get hired by the same company. And the only thing that was different was the fact that she had more experience. And guess what happened? She was offered a job at the same company, same classification, for $5,000 less than her husband. I looked at her and said, "And you're still married?" So, women make up half of the workforce. And those of us who are mothers represent 2/3 of the breadwinners and the co-breadwinners for Americans' families. Additionally, women make 70% of the consumer decisions in our country and 80% of the healthcare decisions in our country. So it makes a lot of sense that we have women at the decision-making table, in the boardrooms, in the conference rooms, when companies are evolving and making decisions as to where to go. I know these statistics do not surprise any of you, but maybe some of these other statistics will. The United States ranks 80th in the world in terms of women's leadership in elective office, as well as in the suites of the corporations. With countries such as Uzbekistan and Moldova, I can't even say it, Moldova, surpassing us. China has a corporate structure where nearly 50% of their corporate leaders are women. Even Vietnam, Estonia, Botswana surpass the United States. So in our age and time where the importance of issues like quality, affordable childcare is crucial to families' economic success, we still have a workplace where mothers are seen as less committed, half as likely to be hired, and offered $11,000 less than non-moms and dads. So what does that say about our value system? About how we view moms, how we view families, how we view them as critical to our economic success. And in our region, which is hailed as the most innovative place on the planet, we have much more ground to cover. In a region that creates the future every day, women are still largely relegated to lower positions. I'm often confronted with these statistics and confounded by them because we know that women lead in very profound ways. And the studies are pretty significant. Women are more capital efficient than men. Maybe because we've had these checkbooks that we had to balance and family budgets for as long as we can remember. Organizations that are the most inclusive of women in top management positions achieve a 35% higher return on equity and 34% higher total return to shareholders. So if you look at these numbers, what business decision wouldn't be made not to include more women? The Babson's Global Entrepreneurship Monitor found that women-led high-tech startups have lower failure rates than those led by men. Other research has shown that venture-backed companies run by women have an annual revenues that are 12% higher than those of men. So I am really convinced that the missing link is having more women working with men on these kinds of issues. And that's where all of you come into play. Now let's be honest, this is just human nature. We tend to hire people that are like us. We do that. Women do it, men do it. And the result is that you continue this inequality, so to speak, depending on where you are. And this really came home to roost for me after Prop 209 passed in California. And I was approached by some rocket scientists, no kidding, from UC who were women. And they said to me, "We've got a problem in UC. Since Prop 209 passed, we've seen the number of PhDs who are women just take a nosedive. Went from 36% to the low 20%. And Prop 209, if you remember, was all about affirmative action. So I said, well, this is a problem. We should look at it. So then I had the General Accounting Office or the auditor, I should say, it's called the General Accounting Office in DC, but it's the state auditor, look at what was happening at UCs in terms of hiring women PhDs. I mean, why would a math department have 0 women professors when they're graduating with PhDs, 40, 50% women mathematicians? So the GAO, the state auditor, did their review, and then we had a hearing, because I was then the chair of the oversight committee for the state senate. And we brought women PhDs and professors from all over the state of California within the UC system, and they were smart as whips. And then we had a representative from MIT who came and pointed out that they did a study of lab space of MIT scientists, and lo and behold, the lab space for women scientists at MIT were much smaller than the laboratory spaces for the male scientists at MIT. And so what did MIT do? They looked at themselves and they changed things. So over the course of about 3 to 4 years, we had a hearing almost every year. We had 3 or 4 audits. The president of the University of California created a gender equity council. And over that period of time, the numbers started to creep up again, even though Prop 209 had been disbanded. So it's a great example of how, if we work together but put a spotlight on what's wrong, we can achieve a great deal of success. And we won't be talking about this again in another 25 years, shaking our heads about why something hasn't happened. So I think that we need to engage more men in this room. I want to put a heads up to George Halverson, who's here from Kaiser. I really appreciate that. That's a CEO who gets it. How many male CEOs are in the room right now? Jim Wunderman. So 3. How many female CEOs are in the room right now? 2. 3. All right. So it's really all about engaging each other. And I think that there's a number of ways that we can play a role in creating greater equality. One is encourage men to do some laundry. This work-life balance issue is a real one. But until men engage in more of that activity, it's not necessarily felt. So passing a Family Leave Act that provides for paternity care as well is really important. It's very important. 2, make this woman problem our problem. It's not going to be good enough for women to be making the case. Women and men have to make the case. So part of your challenge, I think, here is how do we engage more men in this process? And how do we help convince them that it's really the smart thing to do for the bottom line? We've been hammering about the importance of making it in America, so everyone makes it in America. We want manufacturing to come back to the United States, so we've been beating that drum in Washington for a number of years now. And all of a sudden, manufacturing is coming back to the United States. Now, we'd all like to take credit for it, but you know what? I don't know that we can actually take credit for it. The reason why more manufacturing is coming back to the United States is because it's recognized in the bottom line. The cost of energy has just skyrocketed in China. The cost of the labor workforce has gone way up. And all of a sudden, the bottom line suggests, manufacturing in the United States is a smart thing to do. And it's a smart thing to do to have women at that decision-making position, because the profits will go up, the successes will be greater, and that's good for everybody. I think it's really important that we have mentors. I always talk about femtors because I want to see women femtoring other women. But I think in this case, it's really important to have mentors. It's really important to have men that are engaged in helping to guide the careers of women. I was really lucky. Very early in my legislative career, I had a really powerful mentor in Congressman Leo Ryan. And he was very helpful in terms of helping me define who I was and giving me the sense that I had all the qualifications to do the job. So I think getting more golden boys involved in helping the golden girls is a good way to look at it. And then we need to ask a question, and it's a powerful question, really simple question. Where are the women? And if we ask that question often enough, we will see that things will change. Every time I go visit a corporation in this district, and I do it often, I'm going to be doing it in a matter of minutes when I go to Life Technologies that's now been purchased by Thermo Fisher. That's one of the questions that I will ask. When I was at Visa recently, I said, "Where's your diversity?" And they said, "We really do want to diversify." So if enough people ask the question, it will start to happen. Now, I want to also say that the private sector, in many respects, has done a really good job of creating better cultures for women to thrive. Frankly, much better than some in the federal government. And I say that because I have been dealing with an issue in the military around sexual assault and rape. And I know the one thing that's not tolerated in the private sector anymore is a hostile work environment and sexual harassment. When any of that occurs, and I've talked to lots of CEOs, the first thing that happens is people are put on administrative leave, they're fired, and the like. Not so in the military, and let me give you an example. Recently, the services were asked to do a sweep, as they called it, of space and cubicles and lockers to determine whether or not there was offensive material in these cubicles and lockers. And lo and behold, in the Air Force in particular, there were 30,000 such documents that were identified. So I asked a really simple question. What happened to those who had these offensive documents, whether they were on panels in their cubicle or whether they were in their computer or whether they were pornographic? What happened to them? And guess what? They said, "I had to get back to you." And that was over a year ago. Last week, I asked the same question of the Secretary of the Air Force. And guess what the answer was I got? "I'll have to get back to you." So in many respects, conduct in the military that is and has been acceptable in terms of culture is not acceptable in the private sector. And that's good news and shows that you're particularly farther ahead than some of our counterparts are in the government. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I know one thing for sure. When women succeed, America succeeds. And that should be part of our mantra as we look to this very robust 21st century and what it's going to look like. Certainly, those of you who are in your 30s today can and should demand action on these issues, because really, time's a wasting. Thank you.